let me take you back to your childhood.
Hi, I'm David, and today I'm here to tell you about the word persistent. Persistent means not to give up even when things don't go the way you want them to.
Mr. David. Mr. David, please play soccer with Elmo.
Not right now, Elmo. I'm in the middle of something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back to persistent. Here's an example. If you want to learn how to dribble a ball like this, you have to keep trying and trying. You have to be persistent.
Mr. David, are you ready for Elmo?
Not yet, Elmo.
Oh, okay.
And if you want to be able to bounce a ball on your head like this, you can't give up. You have to be persistent. So if you really, really want to do something...
Mr. David, please, can Elmo and Mr. David play right now? Please.
It pays to be persistent. Like my red furry friend here. Come on, Elmo, let's play.
Okay. Persistent! You go first.
You're too young to remember who David Beckham is, but some of us will know who he is. Have we ever been on the receiving end of a persistent request, and how do we respond? Those of us who are parents will probably be familiar with this. Do we just give in quickly, like David Beckham did? Only after 3 times he wanted to kind of get rid of the request and went off to play. Or do we get annoyed because the person won't go away and we say, right, because they're annoying me, I'm going to dig my heels in and refuse their request? Which are you? Are you a giving in person, or are you a, I'm not going to do it because they're being so annoying? Put your hands up if you're, I'm a giving in person. Okay, look, a bunch of softies here. What about those who say they're being so annoying, I'm definitely not going to give them what they want? Yeah, okay. Okay. People who can't make up their minds about anything. Well, okay, so one of our children was very persistent in asking for things. I won't say who it was, but often Joe and I found this quite frustrating and annoying. But then we realised that it wasn't a characteristic that we really wanted to squash, because persistence can actually be a positive, a virtue. Of course, if she asked us to buy a toy when it wasn't her birthday or Christmas, we had to help her understand that however much she asked, she was not going to get that toy. But she just kept on asking until we did get really frustrated. But as I say, we did not want to squash her persistence. And there are occasions when persistence is something we really should cherish and even foster, particularly when it comes to our relationship with God. I'm going to ask Moira to read a passage from 1 Chronicles 16.
As Matthew's just said, our first reading is from 1 Chronicles chapter 16, and it's verses 7 to 22. That day, David first committed to Asaph and his associates this psalm of thanks to the Lord. Give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him, sing praise to him, tell of all his wonderful acts, glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look to the Lord and his strength, seek his face always. Remember the wonders he has done, his miracles, and the judgments he pronounced. O descendants of Israel, his servant, O sons of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are all in the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word he commanded for 1,000 generations, the covenant he made with Abraham, the oath he swore to Isaac. He confirmed it to Jacob as a decree, to Israel as an everlasting covenant. To you I will give the land of Canaan as the portion you will inherit. When they were but few in number, few indeed, and strangers in it, They wandered from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another. He allowed no man to oppress them. For their sake he rebuked kings. Do not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks so much, Moira. So this that we've just read in 1 Chronicles is a Psalm of David. It's one of a number of psalms that occur outside the book of Psalms in the Bible. It's a psalm, but not a psalm. David introduces it with a call to persistence in our approach to the praise and worship of God. Listen to this again. Give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name. Make known among the nations what he's done. Sing to him. Sing praise to him. Tell of his wonderful acts. Glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of all those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look to the Lord in his strength. Seek his face always. Basically, be persistent in your relationship with God. The reason I chose this passage is because if we listen to the rest of it, we will see how persistent God is. He remembers his covenant forever, the word he commanded for 1,000 generations. Would we be that persistent, or would we give up after 20 minutes, a week, 6 weeks? God persists for generations and generations. So it seems to me that if one of the characteristics of God is persistence, it's something that we need to develop in our love for him. The whole book of Psalms is written to encourage us to be persistent in an intimate relationship with God, in praise, in worship and prayer, in obedience and in lament too, but persistence in all of these things, which is why reading the Psalms forms an integral part of the set worship of the church, because reading the Psalms teaches us to be persistent in our worship. So when we have needs and requests in our lives, I wonder what they are at the moment. Who is it that we turn to? Who or what should our first port of call be? Should it be the bank manager if we need a bit more money? Should it be the doctor if we're not feeling well? Should it be Google if we don't know the answer? Well, of course, it depends on what we need. But Jesus, as he invites us into a new way of living in his Sermon on the Mount, suggests that our first priority perhaps should be something else. Anne, you're going to read from Matthew 7. Thank you.
Our second reading is from Matthew 7, 7 to 12. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will you give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will you give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, and how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks so much, Anne. You may think, why have I chosen to focus on persistence when we hear what Jesus taught in this passage? Well, with those three words, ask, seek, and knock, Jesus is instructing us or saying to us, go to God, go to your Heavenly Father with persistence. Why did he use these three words in this order? Well, I don't know, Josh, what you were like when you were a child, but I suspect that you probably said, Mummy, sometimes, did you? Mummy, can I have an ice cream? Yeah, okay. We all did it when we were children. We probably just called out a question, can we have? Because at that moment, I suspect there was nothing else in the world that you needed to stay alive other than the ice cream. Mummy, can I have an ice cream? If Kathy had been in the room, then that would have been fine. She would have heard the request and responded accordingly. Say no more. But if Kathy had not been in the room, what would Josh have had to do? He'd have to go and find her. He'd have to seek. He'd have to say, now, if he really wanted an ice cream at that moment, he would have. If he was just saying it because he was saying it and Mummy wasn't there and he wasn't bothered about the ice cream, he would have just kind of, okay, left it. But if he really wanted an ice cream, he'd go and seek her out and say, Mummy, can I have an ice cream? I'm busy now, Josh. Later. Okay? What if Kathy had not been in a place where Josh could find her? What if she'd barricaded herself in her bedroom for a moment's peace and quiet? Mummy, where are you? Where are you? I know you're in there. I can't open the door. I'm not tall enough to reach the handle. Mummy, are you there? Can I have an ice cream? And eventually, Kathy would have to open the door and say, I'm here, and give her response, whatever it is. So within these three actions is a suggestion of determination: ask, seek, and knock. Persistence in pursuing that request. So that's why we're thinking about persistence today. Persistence in pursuing God wholeheartedly with our needs and requests. Now, I think many of us struggle to ask God for things because early in life we've been discouraged from being persistent or asking for stuff. It's not polite. It's not the done thing. It's just not British. Do you remember being told this? I definitely remember this. Those who ask don't get. Those who don't ask don't want. It's like a catch-22 situation. You don't ask because you're told you won't get it if you do ask. You don't ask because you don't want it. But I still find it difficult even today when I knock on somebody's door and there is no immediate response. Going through my head is, am I disturbing them? Is what I want to see them about more important than what they are already doing? I've been taught from an early age not to knock persistently, because if the door's not open, it means the other person's out or they're too busy to answer it. And my tendency is to leave and plan to return at a later date when it might be more convenient. And whether that's you or whether there's something else that stops you from asking for stuff, we all find it difficult to ask God for stuff. He won't be bothered with me. Other people need stuff more than I do. He's not interested. He's far too busy to look after my concerns. But what if, when Kathy had opened the door to Josh, or when somebody opens the door to me, they had made me feel, Kathy had made Josh feel, that he was the very person she wanted to see at that moment. That there was no one else that she would rather see. There was no one else that would be rather welcomed into this person's home than me. What if they welcomed me in, invited me in and said, is there anything I can do for you? Anything at all? I'm so glad you didn't go away. I was just finishing something else. It's all finished now. You have my full attention. How would we feel? This is our Father in heaven. He delights in our presence. The more we come to him with our requests, the more he is able to delight in us. So because of this, whatever we ask for, his response is always going to bless us. However, it might be that the new Mercedes we think we want isn't actually the way we are going to be blessed most richly. However much we try to persuade God it is, it probably may not be. Instead, the kind of blessing that God may want to give us is the restoration of a relationship that's going wrong, the healing of a memory that's difficult for us, the healing, physical healing of somebody that we love who is sick. And Jesus goes on to say, earthly parents who are fallible and broken, who make mistakes, who don't give their children ice cream always when they ask, still know how to give their children good things when they ask for them. How much more will your heavenly Father, who loves you more than your earthly parents can ever dream of, how much more will God give you good things? And so persistence, in this case, asking, seeking and knocking, is about asking, seeking and knocking for God's blessing. Because as we draw closer to God, gradually we begin to understand his ways and the things that are close to his heart, and we learn to share those things that are close to his heart. And what we ask for begins to change. So instead of praying for that new Mercedes or a better kitchen or a new, I don't know, what version of PlayStation are we on now? 5, only 5. I've got me on there. Okay, PlayStation 5. Instead of asking for those, we'll start saying, actually, I really would love it if my best friend became a Christian. I would love it if my children and grandchildren grew up to know the goodness of God.
Why is it
Well, we're not quite ready for that, but we're nearly. Okay. Jesus finishes this passage with the so-called golden rule, which appears in a number of other religions, but appears in a negative form. So Jesus says, in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. In other religions, it appears in the opposite. It says, don't do to other people what you wish they wouldn't do to you. But Jesus has a positive spin on it because he's preached about asking for God's blessing and receiving God's blessing, and then acting in this way in the light of God's blessing. Are there things that we have been asking God for a long time and we don't feel we've received? Does it feel like he hasn't answered? Don't give up. As we heard in the reading from 1 Chronicles, God didn't give up. But generation after generation after generation after generation, he kept on with his people. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking on his door. He wants to bless us, and the promise is that if we keep doing it, we will find. We will find that blessing, the knowledge that we can be secure in his love, not just for this life, but for eternity. I'm just going to finish with a clip that encourages us to be persistent in praying for one particular thing, and I hope it will encourage each of us to pray for that thing for somebody we know.
Why is it important to pray? Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I wonder what your answers would be. But my answer is firstly that we see from Jesus in the Gospels that he spent time with his Father. He went off on many occasions to spend alone time with his Father to pray and seek his face. And so I think we are encouraged to do the same. But Jesus also gives us an example of how to pray, the Lord's Prayer. But also, I think prayer, it works. I have seen over many years of my own life when I have prayed about different situations, God always has given an answer. Maybe it's not always the answer that I expect or desire, but I know that God's got a plan in every situation and every season of my life. And I have seen that prayer works. So now I just want to share a quick story because I have seen that prayer has worked in my life over just the last few months. When I was 13, I met my best friend Jo. She was 12. I was brunette. She was blonde. We bonded over our love of Taylor Swift. We've been friends ever since, and I've gone through the highs and the lows of growing up. And just a few months ago, I felt really challenged to pray for her because she wasn't a Christian. So I began fervently to pray every single day that Jo would come to know Jesus. We began to have more and more conversations about who Jesus is and what he did on the cross for everyone. And I began to explain how she could have life and experience it to the full if she just came to know Jesus personally. And then a few weeks passed by, and I remember texting her. And I said, Jo, if there's one thing I could pray for you for, what would it be? And this is the text I got back. Grace, yesterday I made a decision, quietly on my own, in my own space, to become a follower of Jesus. Please pray that I find a church where I can find community, family, and grow in my knowledge of who Jesus is and what he's done for me. What a text to get back. But prayer works. So I want to encourage you today. If you're praying for your friend, keep praying, keep pressing in to what God has for them. Take the opportunities to share your faith when the opportunities arise, but believe that God in heaven has a plan. The biggest thing that I discovered when I began to pray for my friend was that I began to grow a desire within me to see her know God. So, prayer works. Keep praying for those friends, those family members who don't yet know Jesus. And I'm believing with you, and I have faith with you that they will too, like Jo, encounter the love of God for themselves.